Welcome and thank you for joining our Dynamics GP webinar on understanding your path forward. Before we get started, I'd like to go through a couple housekeeping items with you. First, you can maximize or minimize the webinar pane during the presentation by using the reddish-orange buttons on the Go to Webinar panel. During the webinar, we also encourage you to ask some questions as well. In the webinar pane, you'll see a questions box that you can use to type your questions in and click submit. There is also a chat feature on this, and you're welcome to enter your questions into there as well. Second, we want to make sure your audio settings are prime for you. So you do have the option to click either computer audio or a phone call. So if you're having some issues with audio, you might try switching in between those as well. So let's get started with our presenters. I'll have each one of them go through and introduce themselves, and we'll get started.
Excellent. Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alvin Castillo. I'm a director here at Armanino. My main role is as a strategic account manager, and I've worked with a lot of our larger enterprise customers, and I also actually mentor a lot of the group, and I'm in pretty deep with our managed services program as well. Steve?
My name is Steve Chapman. I'm with Armanino as a solution architect. I've been working with Dynamics probably for almost 20 years. I worked for GP and also Business Central. I worked as a consultant, also support engineer, and right now in a pre-sales process.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Teresa Brown, a partner in our consulting group as well. Have a long history with the GP product, and I'm happy to be here to help tell you a little bit more about BC with these great people. A little bit about our agenda today. We're going to have Albert review sort of what lifecycle support plans are, what are some important dates, and when the various versions are due to expire. We're going to talk about a concept of utilizing what are called dual licenses, where you have access to both GP and Business Central. We'll talk about how to grow your chart of accounts, talk about a little bit about the conversion process moving from GP to BC, and sort of the most exciting part of today's presentation is a sneak peek at the Dynamics BC solution. So I wanted to talk a little bit about change, and this graphic, we use this a lot. I think it's a really good representation of what change is all about. And catalyst is really, the catalyst for growth is really change and disruption in the marketplace. And in particular this year, it's been very evident as we've gone through a pandemic and we've had people going to work from home. These kinds of changes really take our CFO organization from being sort of accountants and being more strategic thinking. And in order to do that, you've got to become transformational, be innovative, so that you can be an influencer in your organization. While not everybody on this line is a CFO, you obviously are part of that CFO and that leadership organization in some way. And so we need to be able to react to these disruptive market changes at breakneck speed these days. So just this graphic really represents the desired allocation of a CFO or part of the CFO organization to become more of a leader versus the accountant doing debits and credits every day. And one of the ways that we see our CFOs making that transformation is getting more into the cloud. So I want to move to the next slide. So we'll go to polling question number 1, and it actually talks about the cloud. So what grade would you give your company on adopting the cloud today? Either A, most of our business apps are in the cloud. B, some of our business apps are in the cloud. C, we are slower to adopt the cloud. Or D, we have no cloud apps in our business. And so we're looking to find out how many of you are actually utilizing technology? And I'm guessing that that has changed since the last time we asked this question. I bet a lot of people have made some changes as a result of the last year.
Great. And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, this is great. This is great. So having 42% of our folks on the line here having most of their business apps in the cloud is really, really telling. When we asked the question about a year ago, I would say it was a smaller number for sure. We've got about 25%, some are in the cloud, and we've got about 33% who have adopted the cloud slower, but the good news is there's nobody in the D category that has no cloud apps in their business. So really excited to know that. And certainly putting your ERP in the cloud can be a big transformational way that you can make a positive impact on your company. I'm going to turn it over to Albert now to talk about demystifying the GP lifecycle policy.
Thank you, Teresa. And as our audience is probably very well aware, Microsoft Dynamics GP has what we are calling well, I call it legacy, but it's a fixed policy as far as the life cycle is concerned. Kim, if we can go to the next page, I'm going to talk to some of these points. And I think the most important date to think about is depending on the version of GP that you're on. If you're on a version that was released, not necessarily installed for you, but released before October of 2019, you are on what's known as the fixed policy lifecycle, and that's the legacy cycle that most people are familiar with. And basically what that means is it has two parts. One is the mainstream support, and the second is the extended support. And down below, you can see that for Dynamics GP 2015, the mainstream support actually ended almost about a year ago. For those of you that are on GP 2016, mainstream support is going to end in July of this year, so that's coming up pretty soon. And then for the rest of you that are on GP 2018, whether that's R2 or GP 2018, but it's again a version, and that version is before October 2019. Your mainstream support ends in January of 2023. Now, what's notable here is these all have that fixed life cycle. They have 5 years of mainstream support, and then there's 5 years of extended support. If we can go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what the difference is. So the mainstream support is really focused on continuous enhancements of the version that you're on. And so that would mean tax updates, year-end updates, along with security updates and other non-security related hot fixes that might be released during that 5-year life cycle. Once someone is in the extended life cycle, you're actually only getting security updates. So no hot fixes. There isn't anything that's actually being addressed as far as a functional issue that's going to happen within that version. So if you're on GP 2015, you've already entered the extended support cycle. And so that means that functionally wise, you're not going to get enhancements. You're going to get security updates for the next 4.5 years. But that's it. All right. As we move to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about what the new support life cycle is. It's actually known as the modern life cycle, and it's a 1-year life cycle instead of a 5 mainstream cycle. And really what this means is that every year Microsoft has 3 releases. One's going to be in October, one's going to be in June, and one's going to be, it's actually end of November. The reason we put November, December is that it's usually released the week of Thanksgiving. Most people aren't working that end of that week when it's released, so it's really December 1st, 2nd, or 3rd that people start looking at it. This is a fixed cycle, so what you see here is the October life cycle is going to have new features and bug fixes, whereas the June update is really going to have tax updates and bug fixes. And those tax updates are usually coming on from the year end, the previous year end. And obviously the year end itself is going to actually roll up October and June into it. For those of you that are not dependent on GP for payroll or for 1099s, printing and processing 1099s, you can take an update at any time during the year or during the cycle. If you are focused on staying current, you can do it, either of these. You don't have to do the year end. You just basically schedule it to where you take the next cycle, let's say in June. They're all cumulative, so whatever happened before is going to roll up into the version that you take. And as you see here, the plan for the next 4 years is really staying pretty steadfast to that process and that release cycle. And so the main difference between the fixed policy and the modern life cycle is that the legacy version really is what we would have called version upgrade. So that would take you from GP 2010 or 2015 or 2016 to the next version. That is no longer happening with the way that now Dynamics GP 18.2 or 18.x is being done. They're not going to be major version upgrades anymore. They're going to be basically intra-version updates. So these releases are a lot less cumbersome, a lot less time and effort that goes into it, which also translates into less cost and effort on your part as well. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the dual license offer. For those of you that are interested, and hopefully everyone that's on this call has some level of interest, at least of understanding what Business Central is about, how you can take advantage of the dual license offer. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. The main thing is you must have an active enhancement plan. That means the annual renewal plan that you get from Armanino, or if you don't happen to be one of our customers and you have another partner, you have to keep paying that to be eligible for the dual license offer. What that really means is at enhancement time, or sort of enhancement renewal time, you will be able to pay the same amount to get access to both GP and keep working within it, and get licenses for Business Central and literally test it out for actually up to 3 years, believe it or not. Hopefully you don't take that long to make the decision. We've actually developed some programs to help customers if they want to do a DIY or want some more specific guidance on that. We have several packages that we can work through. But the reality is the license really is a great way to keep working in your own system, but then spend some time looking at what the difference is, what the commonalities are, what you can do in Business Central. And later today, Steve is actually going to show you guys really what that looks like. And so again, this is a fantastic offer for any of you that just literally want to kick the tires. I mean, this is literally a tire kicking type of opportunity where there's no additional cost. You are transferring your license from the perpetual license to what's known as CSP, or Cloud Service Provider. But again, you don't have to, at that point in time, you don't have to move over to Business Central if you decide that it's not the right business decision for you. But it gives you that access to both of the systems. Next slide, please. Is it coming?
It's there. It's there. It's there. It's just maybe a little slow on your end. Yeah.
It is. Thank you.
You're going to talk about the benefits.
Yep. So there's a number of benefits. Again, as I mentioned before, you're getting access to your current system, which is Dynamics GP and Business Central, right? So that in itself is a huge benefit. The other component is you end up getting the same user count that you have right now. So that way it's not just 1 or 2 people testing the system. If you want if you want to run parallel for a little bit and just see how that can happen, you can do that. The other added benefit of using the dual rights program now is you actually have an opportunity to purchase the license at a 60% discount, not only the first year, but up to 2 years after. So for 3 years, you can actually get the Business Central licensing at like I said, a super steep discount. Obviously, Microsoft has spent a lot of effort making this accessible to the GP client base, but not just GP. I mean, we have clients on NAV, which is really more aligned with Business Central, but there are still a lot of folks out there on the system, or SL, which used to be Solomon, right? And so the same offer is being extended to them as well. Again, the biggest catch here is you have to have an enhancement plan. The next one, it's like a 1A and a 1B. The next catch is this promo has been running since last June. So June 1st of last year is when it first released, and it actually expires June 30th of this year. So for those of you that have an interest and have a renewal before June 30th, please make sure you contact your client manager and start that conversation. Say, look, I want to take advantage of this. Even if I don't end up moving, I want to at least have access to that license. Do it now. For those of you that don't have a renewal between now and June 30th, there's still an opportunity for you to purchase the license at a 60% discount. It just will be in addition to your current enhancement plan. So you're not in essence getting the dual rights in the same way, but you do get the highly discounted license. Okay, so as we get into the licensing here, as I mentioned before, there's a 60% discount across all the license types. Most of the clients are either going to be taking a premium or an essential license. Few might take the team members or device, especially if you have multiple shifts working out of a plant. The central device, the Business Central device, is probably the path that you would go with. And the main difference between premium and essentials is your core GLA/PAR, whereas premium you're starting to add supply chain, distribution, some of the modules that really aren't used as much by some GP customers. So depending on the license type that you would need to get, you either would be paying $40 a user or $28 a user for the most part. And again, as a reminder, you will need an active enhancement plan to take advantage of this option.
Great, Albert, thanks for that. I think as we continue to present this, it gets a little bit clearer and clearer for our audience. I'm a very visual person, so I like to see some examples of what this might look like from a timeline perspective. There's no start or end date here because it's really up to when you decide to pull the trigger. But the first step would be, as Albert mentioned, if you've got a renewal date prior to June 30th, then the first step would be obviously contact your client manager, contact Albert, and take advantage of the conversion to those BC licenses within 30 days prior to your renewal up to June 30th, and you'll get those dual use rights. At that point, we can then migrate your data. That's one of the really nice features, is there are migration tools existing today that will take that GP data, put it into the BC shell, and it allows you to then stay on GP, do your business as usual, but up at the top there in the purple section, you can test, play with it, try different things, let your people play with the solution, see if it's going to work for your business. We can help you through the migration, we can help you through the testing, and we can help you by planning the move for you. So you can do that testing and playing for up to a year to make sure that it works for you, and then we'll help you plan the move, making sure that it fits the business's needs, and then plan the implementation. And then, of course, the final step would be the migration to Business Central. And then you would still keep those GP licenses. You may need to inquire data that's historical for audit purposes and such, so you would not lose that access. Let's move to the next slide. So this is an example if your renewal is due after June 30th. Very little difference here, except that if your enhancement is due after June 30th, in that green section there, as Albert mentioned, go ahead and take advantage of the discounted licenses now, purchase some BC licenses. Again, we can help you migrate the data, test, play. The difference here is that you're now taking advantage of the BC licenses at that discount, but the rest of this, this diagram is the same. Next slide. So we talked at the very beginning of this presentation about the need for being transformational, and wanted to dig deeper into a couple of the business change drivers. And you know, we mentioned the pandemic, and that was very disruptive and forced people to do things differently. Not able to go to the office and print checks, for example. That makes it a little rough to do your business as usual. But I did want to talk about that first bullet for a moment. Lots of folks implemented GP or SL or NV, you know, 10 plus years ago. And at that time, their business looked very different. Their team looked very different. What they did every day looked very different in many cases. And when you implement and you've made an investment in a solution, it's very hard to let go of that. This gives you a great opportunity to make a change in a very calculated and measured way, and allows you to test it. A lot of you have a newer workforce today than you did 10 years ago, and technology is different, and the newer workforce is looking for newer technology to be able to efficiently and effectively do their jobs. And I'll tell you, I talked to a client who implemented a new ERP system in January of this year. So they went live January 1st. And so when I say 10 years ago, they called me, their business looks 100% different today. So they're looking to make some tremendous changes. So it doesn't need to be 10 years old. It could be 2 years old. If your business is different, this is a great opportunity to make a change, and your ERP system can support it. Next slide. All right, polling question number 2. So what are your path options for Dynamics GP? Do you plan to stay where you are on GP? Are you considering migrating to D365 Business Central, which is what we've been talking about today with that, and also what Steve is going to be showing you here shortly? Or migrate to D365 Finance and Operations, which I believe we have in an upcoming presentation. So our next one will show you a little bit more of F&O, or all of the above. So what are your options here?
Okay, and we'll close that poll in 3, 2, 1.
Yep, so the correct answer on this is you do have an opportunity to do all of the above. I see that 27% are planning on staying with Dynamics GP. Some are planning to migrate to Business Central. I wouldn't expect anybody to answer the F&O just yet because we haven't shown that today. But yes, you have an opportunity to do all of the above, and we certainly encourage you to take a peek at Business Central now, and hopefully it will answer some questions for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve for an overview of D365.
All right, let's get started with this. I think first of all, we're going to look at some functionality. So there's 2 slides like this. The first 3 items on here are probably the most important. They'll affect almost anyone that's on GP and thinking of moving to Business Central. The first one is the license. The whole license setup is different. On GP, most people are using a perpetual license that's based on concurrent users. So that license is your license for the rest of the time. If you want to stay current, you pay the enhancement plan, and it's concurrent. So a number of different people can log into it, but you're constrained to the current license of all the users in at one time. Now, Business Central is based on named users, right? So everyone that uses that system has to have a license. And there's different classes of licenses. And we looked at that before. But basically, the essential license will give you core financials and will also include purchase orders, sales orders, and some inventory. The premium version includes manufacturing processes and also some field service. Now, a big thing is the upgrades. Right now on GP, if you want to go to a new version, if you want to apply a service pack, you have to go through an upgrade process, right? Either you can do it or your partner can do it, we can do it. Maybe you have a hosting partner that would do it for you. In Business Central, it's a software as a service environment. So Microsoft maintains the software. They'll update it on a regular basis. They've got a regular cadence they follow, which is releasing new functionality, fixing any errors or bugs there might be in the product. And this all happens while you sleep, right? So the next time you log in, you say, oh, they fixed this, or maybe I got some new functionality. You will be notified of when your instance is going to be upgraded, and you get plenty of notice on what those upgrades are going to be. So you've got a chance to understand it and incorporate that into your business. Now, the third thing that's a big difference is the general ledger, right? There's a general ledger in both systems, obviously, but in GP, it's a static chart of accounts. In other words, you have to identify every combination of your main account and any segment values that you have. You've got to put those in your chart of accounts now. For a lot of people, that's a pain point because they have dynamic businesses and they've got changes to their chart of accounts. You can possibly end up with literally thousands of accounts. In Business Central, it's a dynamic chart of accounts. So there's a basic main account and then dimensions. The dimensions are really the segments in your current GP account. You can use those dimensions, but the value is that you don't have to assign each dimension to a main account and other dimensions. You can use those dimensions as you need them to record the transactions. It makes reporting also a lot more flexible. So it's really a more modern chart of accounts. Those top three, I think, are big differentiators between the two systems. The other ones here are, let's take a look at them quickly. For multi-entities, the structure is basically the same. If you've got a different company, you're going to have a different database or a different company in both GP and Business Central. The good news here is if you're using binary string, multi-entity management, that product works both with GP and also Business Central. We have a lot of clients that use that particular ISV product or third-party product in each of the systems. Financial reporting, it's different here. So in GP, you've got Management Reporter. Most people use that. It's a really good product. In Business Central, we're suggesting people use Solver. Solver is a third-party product. It's a Microsoft-focused product, has been around for years and years. And it's a very good reporting tool. On the budgeting standpoint, it's pretty similar between GP and BC. You can store budgets in there. You can pull those into the financial reports if you have, and you can manage them in the ERP system if you want to. The BI capabilities of both are similar too. The databases are relatively open, well, they are open, and they're relatively easy to get to. They're not real deep, right? The relational database structure of both systems is relatively flat. So it's easy for users to get at that information and make sense of it. And one of the things about Business Central is it's really focused on making Power BI a good reporting platform for that particular system. You can use Power BI in either system, but Business Central comes out of the box and has a few Power BI reports that you can load instantly into your instance of Business Central. And it's easy to, there's a number of small third-party products that we also encourage people to at least take a look at that add a lot of reporting capability to it. Now in inventory, the systems are basically the same. Everything you can do in GP, you can pretty much do that in Business Central. And that includes multiple locations, it includes bins, it includes lot tracking, serial number tracking, and all the different types of attributes that you kind of see in Dynamics GP are in Business Central. Business Central does have some advanced warehouse management functionality built into it. So that's a little extra that you get in Business Central. Kim, let's go to the next slide. In both systems, if you're looking at sales commissions and you want to do the calculation within your ERP system, you really need to look at a third-party product. And this is probably true on almost any system. The problem with commissions, the calculating the commissions in an ERP system, is generally the commission structure is driven by sales managers. Sales managers change their mind every quarter. So to incorporate that into an ERP system, it's just frankly difficult. But there are good third-party products that can do that for you. So if that's an issue for you, you're going to be looking at a third-party product in either system. In collections management, both systems have some functionality, right? I can look at my receivables, I can reach out to my clients, I can send them copies of invoices, but there are enhanced functionality that's available from third parties or ISVs that allow you to track the communications with your customers, kind of track the progress that you're making on collecting, and also just analyzing where you are on an aging basis. The revenue recognition is similar in that there's not a lot there. If you're doing some of the more enhanced revenue recognition, it's probably worthwhile looking at a third-party product to manage that, especially if you have bundled products. And it's almost essential that you look at kind of a third-party product for each. And then projects, both systems have the ability to maintain projects. From a budget standpoint, also maintain actual expenditures and then turn around and bill clients for that. Now, if you're familiar with project accounting in GP, it's pretty significant. There's a lot to it. And in Business Central, it's a little simpler. It's a little easier to look at. And that's one of the things we're going to show you here in a few minutes is how the user interface of Business Central is a little easier to work with. It's simpler. It makes a little more sense, perhaps. For example, in GP, project accounting has, from a data entry standpoint, it's got almost a whole additional set of screens that you have to work with. In Business Central, that's not the case. Looking at purchasing, one thing, GP has a requisition functionality in it. Business Central does not. You would have to go to a third party for requisitions. But more and more people are looking for the punch out ability in a requisition system. In other words, when an employee, a requisitioner is putting a requisition together, they want to be able to punch out to an additional site like Office Depot, for example, and pull items off the Office Depot site, put a shopping cart together, and then include that in the requisition approval. If you want to do that type of thing, you're going to have a third-party product with either system, GP or BC. And there's a lot of good ones out there. AP automation, there's different levels of AP automation. Both systems have native workflow that's tied to specific objects within the system. And the notifications can be done via email, and I'll show you a notification on a mobile device in BC. You can see how that looks. MICR check printing in GP, if you're doing that, you know that you need a third party. Most likely you're using Macorma. In Business Central, the ability to print MICR encoded checks is built right into the system. Because the thing there is trying to get that MICR encoding exactly where it needs to be so your bank system can read it, right? So in Business Central, it allows you to make those minor adjustments to get the code exactly where your bank needs it and will accept it. From an expense management standpoint, in both systems, you'll be looking at a third-party product. One we see a lot, one we use internally in Armanino is Concur. Concur is has a lot of functionality around expense management, but also travel as well. Those are additional systems and require an integration into either GP or BC. What's kind of nice on the cash management standpoint is that in the ERP system itself, it's pretty similar. But with BC, Microsoft is making available Yodlee bank feeds included in the Business Central license. And what Yodlee does is it has the ability to look at number of different banks and pull in feeds from your accounts and then incorporate those right into Business Central. So you can automate your bank reconciliation process because those feeds are coming in on a regular basis. You can just open up bank reconciliation, hit automatic reconcile. It'll reconcile everything that's come in through the Yodlee bank feed. So that's a really nice option. Again, that's provided by Microsoft, included in the Business Central license with Yodlee. Integrations are pretty, there's a number of different options in either system. So in GP, you have eConnect, which is basically an API. In Business Central, you also have an API, it's open, and it's probably the preferred way to integrate data into these ERP systems. So actually both systems are pretty strong at integrations. And a lot of the ISV products that you'll see that are available in GP, some of them are available also in BC, and BC has additional ones. So ideally, if you have a third-party product that you're looking at, if it has an integration into GP or BC, that gives you a step ahead, right? You've got that already. Needs some configuration, but almost any external system can be integrated to either of these two systems. All right, let's see what's next here. I like to show this slide because what it shows you is the different functionality, core capabilities of Dynamics BC. You'll probably notice if you look at it is that it's real similar to GP. A lot of the things that you can do in GP, you can do in BC, vice versa. And this kind of lays it out, so named a little differently, but basically I got my core financials, I get distribution. If I want to do manufacturing, that's built into the system. If I want to do field service, that's available as well. And also project accounting, project management, that's in both systems too. And the reporting's, there's different ways to do the reporting in each system, but basically you can have out of the box reporting that's available to everyone, but you can add to that. You might add Power BI or other reporting tools into it. So it's pretty similar to GP, what you're used to now. On the right-hand side of the screen, BC comes with a mobile device. It doesn't come with a mobile device, it comes with a mobile app that you can download to an iPhone or an Android device. You can download it from the App Store. You can log into your Business Central instance, and automatically everything's there. In fact, on this screen, the things that you see are standard mobile app functionality. Right? Nothing's been added to this, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of that in the demonstration coming up. All right. So this is what we're going to go through. I'm going to look at the chart of accounts so you can see it, how it looks in Business Central. I'm going to go through a little transaction processing with a purchase order. I'm going to do some approval on that. I'm also going to show you kind of an interesting thing in Business Central, the ability for users to personalize the screens that they see and interact on a daily basis. And then Business Central has a pretty tight integration with Microsoft Office, both in Excel and also Outlook. So we'll take a look at those as well. All right, let's, I think the next thing is to get into it. All right, here's Business Central. The first thing I want to do is just kind of take you through a diagram of the chart of accounts. So I mentioned earlier in GP, it's a static account. You've got a main segment somewhere in your string, and then you've got additional segments, as many as you want. So that translates into Business Central. On the bottom row there, I've got a chart of accounts, which is just basically the main account. And then I got a separate table of dimensions. I can have up to 8 dimensions. So here I've got, you can see the kind of the correlation between a segment in GP and a dimension. So I've got 4 dimensions here. And if you want to add a 5th dimension, you could call it Aquarius. So let's take a look at Business Central here. Let's get rid of this. All right. So I'm logged in as a user, and every user has access to a home page in Business Central. And what's nice about this is users can modify it to put the elements on there that they want. And it really gets geared towards looking at your business, looking at your organization, and telling you what's going on, right? If you see something that's of interest, you can drill right down into it. I can see overdue purchase invoices. I can drill right down into that and see that. right? And I've got these tiles too as well that kind of organize data. For example, I can look at my purchase orders, I can look at sales orders, and I can drill right into that and get additional information. So this is a handy way to navigate. And there's a standard menu as well, and I've got some bookmarked items as well. But it's fairly easy to navigate. I think you'll see it probably a little easier than GP. But let's take a look. Let's go back to the chart of accounts and look how it's set up in Business Central. The first thing is the main account here. If we look at the main account, it's just a list of all the main accounts, right? And it's pretty straightforward, basic stuff here I've got. And I've got the main account. So I've got that. And then I add the dimensions to it. The dimensions are listed here. This is the GL setup. And I can have up to 8 dimensions out of the box. I'm ready to go. The first 2 are called global dimensions, that they show up everywhere. They're on every transaction, they're on every report. And these other dimensions can be added to the transactions screens and the reports as well. But it gives you the ability to add additional information. And so, for example, if I'm using if I'm using binary stream multi-entity management, I'm going to use this first dimension to designate my entity. And then the other ones I can use as I want to. And you can see I've got kind of a mishmash here of dimensions. I've got a department, which is pretty common, but then I've got a customer group, and I've got some specific information for a particular industry here, Medicare line and UDS line. I use this for a demonstration to, I believe it was a healthcare organization that had a number of different locations they're filing insurance claims for. So you can organize this any way. And again, the value is that this is dynamic. We got the chart of accounts, and then I can specify these dimensions. Then within the dimensions, there are going to be different values, right? And I don't have to organize ahead of time which dimension value goes to which account, which goes to different values. I can do that on the fly. If I need to restrict it for some reason, I can do that. But the default is that I can assign any dimensional value to a transaction, and I don't have to assign them all. Here I've got 5 dimensions. If I just want to assign the first one, the department, I can do that and leave the others blank, or I can leave them all blank. It doesn't matter. It depends how you want to use the system and how you want to report on the data that's in the system. All right, let's take a look at a purchase order. So I'm going to create a purchase order. I'm going to go in here. It brings up a purchase order screen. And there's a couple things here, right? So this is pretty basic. I got header information, and then I've got the detail. Over on the right-hand side, I've got some additional information. So let's select the vendor and just see how that fills out. Select the vendor here. I could type that in, or I could just look it up as I did. And it brings up information about the vendor. I got some familiar tiles here. I can drill down and get additional information if I want to. Here's the vendor master file. I could just drill into that and take a look at the vendor master file here. Right. And we'll take a look at this a little later. But I can also, this takes up some real estate on the screen. So if I want to get rid of that when I'm doing data entry, I can do that. It goes away. And then I'm going to look up an item here, and I'm just going to pull in one here. Right. So this is looking right at my inventory item, inventory items in my system. And I'll put a quantity in, and I'm going to need a few to trigger the approval process. But also on here, I can also put in non-inventory items, right? I've got options. So I put an item, but I can also put if I'm buying a fixed asset, I can specify a fixed asset. This will go to the fixed asset system. If I'm just putting an expense item in there like this, I can do that and just look up the account. I can type in part of the account name. It'll pull up the account I want, select that. And then let's just put some money in there. All right. So this is my purchase order. Now, what I want to do is I want to go over here to the right because I have my dimensions here, right? So on the inventory item, I don't really care because that's going to go where it needs to go. But on this GL item, I do care where it goes. I want to select some of the dimension values here. Customer group code doesn't make any sense, so I don't need that. But I might want to add some of these others, right? I can just add those in as I need them. I don't need to fill in every combination. And this combination of miscellaneous expense, the department code and production code, and this Medicare line code has never been seen by Business Central before, but it's allowing me to enter it. And now you say, well, that's nice, Steve, but I have to scroll all the way over to the right to do this. That's kind of cumbersome. Well, what you can do, I'm looking at a standard screen in Business Central, but what I can do is I can personalize it. Go up here and hit personalize. When I do that, it goes into a personalized mode and allows me to move columns around if I want to. So if I wanted to start moving these columns to the left, I could do that. I could just push it over here, wherever I wanted to, and add the other ones, right? So you get that. But I can also add fields here. So what's missing here is any information about a project. If I'm not using the dimensions to designate a project, which is pretty common, people want to do that, I can add some field information here. So when I hit that, it's going to bring up additional fields I can add to my system, and I'm just going to add the job number here. And I think there's a job task code here too. I'll add that in, right? And then I'm done. So when I make this personalization, it's personal. It happens just for me. It doesn't happen for everybody else in the system. And if I want to get rid of it later, I can go back and just undo those personalizations. So now you see on this particular line, I can select a job or a project. I can add a task to that, right? That becomes part of the purchase order. Now, why I want to show this is because you can personalize it, right? This makes the system easier to use for everyone. Plus, I'm looking at a purchase order, which is the same form that a purchase invoice will be in, which is the same form that a project purchase order will be in, or inventory purchase order will be in. In GP, you've got 3, 4, 5 different screens to do all this stuff. So one thing I did is I also added an approval process to that. So I'm going to request approval on that. And it's going to go through and set that up. And let's just take a quick look at it. These are the approvals that were assigned by the system. And in Business Central, I've got an approval table that it looks at. In GP, you've got to be pretty specific about, well, if it's this amount that needs to go to this person, and if it's this amount in a different location that needs to go to this person, you've got to be very specific. Business Central allows you to simplify that a little bit. So this has been approved here, and you can see it's pending approval. And one thing I wanted to show you was a little bit of the mobile device, because what I can do with a mobile device is I can get information directly out of Business Central, but I can also approve items on the mobile device. So I'm starting up the mobile device here, and let's just take a look at it. All right. All right, so this is the mobile application. Now again, this comes out of the box. I have not changed this at all. Let's move it up here a little bit. So what this allows me to do is I can, on my iPhone, I can scroll through to the area that I want, and I get information on the system, and these tiles should look familiar to you. But let's go right to the request to approve. I've got 2 pending. I can click on that. I can see the approvals that are required. Now I'm logged in as a different user on my iPhone, and I can look at that item and say, oh, here it is. If I want to, I can get more information. I can open the record. And let's just say that I know what the vendor's invoice number is, which is unlikely, but what it shows you is I can add information into the system. And then I can go and say, well, I can look at the rest of it. And if it's okay, then I can approve it, I can reject it, or I can delegate it. So I'm going to approve it. When I do it, it's going to update the other system. It's going to update Business Central. So that's the mobile app. And then I'm going to move along here because it's taking a little longer than I thought. There we go. So it updated the vendor invoice. It's now released, so I can receive against it. I can print it out, and I can receive an invoice right off this particular purchase order, right? And it's easy to do. I'm just going to go ahead and complete it here. I just post it, and then I can receive it and invoice it in separate stages for a 3-point match. But I'm just going to do all of them at once, and then that's done. So that purchase order has been invoiced. It's now in accounts payable. So one of the things that I wanted to show you was the integration with Excel. So let's take a look at the vendor list. This is the vendor list, and I can take almost any list in Business Central. I can just open it in Excel, right? That's not a big deal. You can do that right now. And Smart Lists, easy to do. But I can also edit in Excel. In other words, it can open up Excel here with information from Business Central. It's opening up my local Excel. This is on my laptop, even though Business Central is in the cloud, it's in Azure. So I download it to my local laptop. It's going to connect to Business Central, and it's going to allow me to see the data in Business Central. You can see here on the right-hand side, it's logging in. And then there we go, it's getting the data, it's going to fill out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change some of the data here. And what I want to change is over here on this column here. These are basically all the columns in the vendor master file, but I want to change the default inventory location. So what I can do in Excel is I just use the functionality within Excel to copy and paste this, right, on this spreadsheet, and then I'm going to publish it back to Business Central. Goes through it, edits it, make sure that the data is correct, it's been successful, and now I can get rid of the Excel spreadsheet. I don't need it anymore. It was just a data entry tool. Now if I refresh this page here, we'll see that it added the location code in here, right? So there's a tight integration with Excel. I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I will be done. So let's take a look at the integration with Outlook. And this is unique, right? I don't think this exists in other ERP systems. So this is, for this example, this is a email from a customer of mine saying, hey, I'd like to buy this stuff, Steve. And I say, well, that's great. Let's take a look at your Business Central information. And to do that, I'm obviously in email here in Outlook. I can click on Contact Insights. It's going to log into Business Central. It's going to get data about this client. It knows who the client is because the email is assigned to that client in Business Central. It's going to pull up information, and this is going to look real familiar to you because we've been looking at this in the last 15 minutes. Right? So this is basic Business Central information. I can drill down into this, right? I get information here on an invoice. I can pop that open, take a look at it, all within Outlook. But I can also add transactions. So I want to add the sales order. The guy's telling me, hey, I need this stuff. Can you put an order together for me? I said, yeah, I'll do it right now. I'm talking to him on the phone, and I can put this order together, and you can see that it's already assigned an order number because it's connecting directly to Business Central. I'm going to add, we'll make it quick here, add a table, and I'll put a quantity of 1, right? And I can add as many lines as I wanted to, but I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to do 1. You go, well, that's neat, that does that, but also it allows me to communicate back to the client saying, hey, I did what you asked. In fact, I'm going to send you right now an order confirmation. So let's do that. You can see all these functions here, but I'm going to scroll down here, send an email confirmation. And here's the email, right? And it's going to send this customer this confirmation here. and this is standard stuff. You can change this if you want to. Business Central uses Word doc functionality to modify the screens. And now if I wanted to send this, I could just send this to the client and off it goes. So basically I started with an email. I logged into Business Central to see how the customer's doing. He wanted to add an order, so I added an order into it, and I sent him back a confirmation all within Outlook. That's fantastic functionality. All right, I am done. Let's see. I need to get, ooh, I'm lost. Oh, here's some more here. One thing we include in this deck, which I think we'll send out to you, is we've developed a fair amount of content about Business Central. And you can see some of the items that we have here. We've got some blog articles talking about specifics about functionality within Business Central, and also making a migration move, what's involved with that. Additional information about upgrading GP if you want to do that, which is a really good way to go as well. And then I've recorded a number of videos in YouTube, and the link's right here on the page to do that. So you've got a lot of information, and again, this deck I believe is going to be sent out to you. All right, there we go.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. That was a lot of ground to cover in a very short period of time. I think you did a great job sort of giving the highlights of what BC has to offer. So I kind of want to wrap this up with some questions. So I think we had one that came in, and so I did want to address this. While it's not explicitly stated, it feels like Armanino is recommending that people move toward Business Central, or at least take a close look at it, especially for small to medium businesses. So the answer to that question is, you know, we are recommending that you at least take a look at it. We have a very strong community of GP clients that we have and will continue to support for all the years to come that that Microsoft continues to support the product, and we embrace all of you if you make that decision to stay with GP. But we would be remiss if we did not present the opportunity to you to try out the solution that Microsoft is really making a big investment in and really trying to make a difference in the lives of our clients. We are trying to give you that opportunity by giving you all of the options and presenting those to you. So I hope that answers the question. Again, not going away, but we're here to help either way. And Kim, I wasn't seeing any other questions come in. Did you see them? Maybe I missed them.
Teresa, yeah, I think I saw one question that was around what if we have a lot of customizations on GP? What does that path look like if we are considering moving to Dynamics BC?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'd like Albert or Steve to address that question.
Yeah, I think, and this is actually a perfect example for a situation where you could take up to that year to, in essence, test out how Business Central will translate. Some of those customizations might be lack of functionality. So you compare to what's in Business Central that you basically developed a workaround. And the whole concept of doing a proof of concept is really just for that. So you will probably not wholesale remove everything, but there's a high likelihood that with a much more modern platform, there's different ways to address it, especially technology-wise. One thing we didn't get into a lot is the Power Platform, and Steve mentioned even just Office, that kind of integration, but there's something called the Power Platform out there. It is built on the exact same framework as D365 Business Central and CRM and field services and project operations. So you have access to so much more that's native. And so the development goes from super complex to a lot less complex, more maintainable. So there's a lot more options in the modern platform. But again, this is a perfect example where you would do that, and then you can decide which ones to keep and which ones not to keep.
All right, thank you for that. Listen, we are at time and I want to be respectful of everybody's schedule. So next steps for all of you, if you are interested in learning more, please reach out to your client manager. If you don't have a client manager, reach out directly to Albert after this webinar, and then start planning your next move. Kim, you want to take us home?
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. We will be sending out the presentation for this as well as the recording, so we hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.